Hi, Colin. Nice to see you, mate.
Good to see you, mate.
Yeah.
Take a seat, but beware, it's soft.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so I actually knew the owner of RA Smart, Ron Smart, from a personal perspective.
Yeah.
And I wanted a new challenge when I was a young man, and he invited me on board to join RA Smart, really to develop the equipment side of the business, because initially we are commissioned screen makers.
Yeah.
So we were making screens primarily for the printing industry, but our customers were asking us also to supply bespoke short-run printing system. So initially we were actually manufacturing from scratch, fabricating specialist short-run print systems. So for high-end niche market printing primarily onto natural fabrics, cottons and silks. And then along with that, all the additional auxiliary equipment. So for certain printing techniques, we need certain other systems to make the dyes color fast and light fast, etc. So we started to manufacture and work with partners on those systems.
Right.
And then with also with screen making equipment, so exposure systems and so on and so forth. And yeah, we were very successful in that specific sort of niche market of the short run.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's based in Macclesfield, and it's very much part of the textile history of the area, isn't it, RA Smart?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, Macclesfield is known as the Silk Town. Yeah. It is actually the western end of the famous Silk Road. The Silk Road that you hear about, which starts over in China and comes all the way over to Europe, it actually ends in Macclesfield. So historically, we are actually known as a town for printing and weaving silk.
You actually are weaving, aren't you?
Yeah, we also do weave, so we're fairly unique as a company in that we do actually offer a range of services. So my side of the business now purely is involved with sales and support of systems, primarily digital systems obviously now as things have developed. But we also have a production facility where we actually still do traditional screen print, and we do techniques which are lend themselves specifically to screen print, and still we don't go down the digital route with those specific processes because they're very involved and very technical. Yeah, so we obviously realised with our sort of customer base being involved with a very niche, short-run sector of the business, we'd kept an eye on digital print in terms of seeing it developed in the graphics side of things. Yeah. And we realised that there was a potential that this technology was going to switch over to textile. In the early days, we actually very quietly bought a couple of graphic systems, installed them into our facility in Macclesfield, and played around. So this was before dedicated textile machines were around to any extent at all. We have had quite a few contacts in Italy, where there's a lot of screen printing going on, contacts with chemical companies, and they actually developed some textile inks for us to actually go through these early systems. And we played around for about 12, 18 months, not really telling anybody. Right. So we had a couple of different systems.
And this was as a manufacturer yourself?
Yeah, absolutely, So we wanted to see where this technology was going. And this is 23 years ago, so this is a long time ago. We very quickly realized that it had potential, but it was extremely hard work. No one knew what they were doing. The ink manufacturers had to try and get the dye stuffs and the inks to work with the head technology, and the head manufacturers were saying, no, this is for graphics, but but there was a determined band of people that really wanted to make this technology work for textiles. So that's how it started at the beginning. We actually had the very first Mamakis in the country. We had Mamakis before Hybrid Services Mamaki UK even existed, actually.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a bit of a secret. Maybe I shouldn't be telling people that. But we did.
Do go on.
Yeah. So obviously when we could see the piezo head technology as being a technology that was going to work with digital textiles more so than the bubble jet technology, which is a very good technology in its own right, but for a digital textile application, we were coming up with problems with that technology. So we jumped on the side of piezo technology. It's a bit like the old videos when they first came out, VHF against Betamax. Nobody knew which was going to work. Anyway, we jumped on the side of piezo, and we could actually see Mamaki as a very interested company in looking at textile systems, and it was great that Mamaki actually introduced a textile printer way back when. So the very first Mamaki textile digital printers that we sold were over 20 years ago.
Wow.
And it was a machine called the Mamaki TX 1600. And it was an overnight success for us and also for our customers. So we wanted to use it wearing our production hat so we could actually offer something a little bit different to our customers, so they could do away with the normal sort of design constraints that they would have. They wouldn't have to worry about the number of colors. They wouldn't have to worry about the size of repeat. All those constraints disappeared overnight. So they all of a sudden went crazy with their types of designs, and it was great for them. And even though it was very slow and very expensive for the sort of couture fashion industry, it didn't really matter,
right,
because they could still afford the technology. There was a market for it, so that helped on our production side of things. And then on the sales of system side of things, because of our historic links with universities, etc., we had an immediate customer base, because the universities want to be at the forefront of technology.
Yeah.
So even though the machines were extremely slow, it was a bit like watching grass grow, less than 1 square meter an hour.
Okay.
But the results were good.
Yeah.
And we were very fortunate to have an immediate customer base, and that's how it all started.
And was that direct to textile?
That was direct to textile. Yeah. So this was actually printing with reactive dyes,
right,
and acid dyes to a certain extent onto silks and cottons,
right,
which present their own problems, and it is a very challenging process, and not really a process probably the most of the visitors to this show will be particularly interested in, because it lends itself to certain products. So yeah, in the early days, actually, sublimation was not on the radar for us,
right,
to be quite frank with you. Yeah.
What are the ink technologies that visitors to the show should need to familiarise themselves with?
Yeah, I think from a textile perspective, if visitors at this show are looking to get into the soft signage sector, which is the buzzword that's going around, it really is the dispersed family of dyes, and there are a couple of variants within that.
Yeah.
And people can get a little bit confused, but fundamentally we're either looking at a dye sublimation ink, so we're using a dispersed dye and printing it indirectly onto a paper, and then using that paper to actually transfer onto the textile with a secondary process with a heat application machine. Or indeed we can be looking at a dye sublimation dye that you can print directly onto a textile. It's called a dual ink, basically. And the third ink chemistry is what we call a true dispersed dye. And a true dispersed dye offers some technical features that the other two don't.
Okay.
And it probably should be spoken about a little bit more, because it's probably not. There are probably a few people who aren't aware of the technical advantages of printing with a true dispersed dye over a sublimatic ink. But again, it then introduces potentially some extra processes. So it's a case of what that soft signage is going to be used for in terms of an application, whether it's primarily indoor or outdoor or so on and so forth.
Well, we've got a clip. Joe's been over on your stand and looking at the new machine that you've got there and speaking to Alec. So let's have a look at that.
Oh, right, yeah, very good.
This is an absolute show exclusive here at Sign and Digital UK 2018. And I'm joined with Alex from RA Smart here. Alex, this is a really visually impressive machine. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, it is quite an impressive machine. This is brand new, being launched in the UK at this show. It's a new solution. RA Smart's been given the exclusive UK agency for the machine. It's a combination of some of the industry-leading companies in the field. So it's launched as an Impress machine, but the engine has come from MS, the RIP has come from Caldera, and the inks has come from the JK group. So the combination of those three things makes for a really show-stopping machine.
I mean, and the bits that are coming out of it are really incredible footage as well.
Yeah, really high quality results coming out of the machine at incredible speeds. So we're printing this particular image at 2 pass, which is over 215 square meters an hour. So incredibly quick machine and very productive.
So what's been the reaction then? You opened yesterday, second day today. What's been the reaction from people coming in?
Yeah, overall positive reaction. People are surprised to see the machine. It's good that people are coming by, seeing a brand new solution that's on the market as well.
Fantastic. Well, once you've finished watching the talk, get yourself over here and have a look yourself.
Thanks, Joe.
Firstly, can I just say,
Go on.
that's a very handsome young man on there. Does he remind you of anyone?
Yeah, well, very, very good resemblance. He gives a good account of himself too, doesn't he? Yeah. Tell us about that machine.
Yeah, so as Alex was saying, we're really quite excited about the Impress machine. MS is a Italian brand manufactured machine. Probably a little bit of a sleeping giant and maybe not be known too much in this particular sector, but MS probably are the largest producer of textile digital printing systems in the world.
Really?
Most of their systems are more going into the sort of sectors that we were talking about previously. So printing onto natural fabrics with cottons and silks and so on and so forth. And they have a number of industry-leading solutions dependent on productivity levels. In fact, MS actually produced the largest and fastest textile digital printer in the world, the MS Lario, and that will print textiles at a staggering 17 to 1800 square meters per hour,
Right.
which is absolutely phenomenal. And there's probably around about, I'm not sure the exact figures, between about 20 and 25 of those already installed around the world.
Right.
And then they have a range of other systems. So the Impress solution, as Alex was saying, is a combination of taking that industry-leading machine technology and combining that with the Caldera RIP, which is obviously very well known within this sort of industry, and also the ink technology from the JK Group. So these three companies are now all owned and come under the umbrella of the Dover Corporation, which is an American organization, and obviously backing the sort of introduction of this new system, primarily aimed at the soft signage sector. So it's available in two models at a 1m80 version,
Right.
and of course a 3m20. And it would be the 3m20 that most visitors to this show would be most interested in. Unfortunately, our stand wasn't big enough for it, so we got the 180.
And is it a machine that really would be for somebody getting started, or is it for the more experienced?
No, I would suggest that this machine will be for someone that's already been involved in the industry and already, if you like, dipped their toe in the market of the soft signage sector, so probably already have a system. Maybe it's not already 3m20, or maybe it is, but maybe one of the more entry-level machines in terms of productivity, and this will be the next step up from that. So this will be a move to really high-end productivity. As Alex said, speeds of up to 200 square meters an hour is an impressive machine.
That's very, very fast,
Very good,
isn't it? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
So what would be a good machine for somebody to come and take a look at if they've not dipped their toe in the water? But let's say they're a sign maker or a digital printing company, and everyone talks about soft signage today, and it's one of the buzzwords, isn't it? And it's been around for a while now.
Yeah.
But, what are they going to do to get involved in that market?
Absolutely. So the sort of technology they're going to be looking at, their first decision is going to be the width of product that they want to produce. Are they going to be able to satisfy their customers' requirements with a 1m80 wide system, or do they think they need to go to the 3m20 system to maybe get them into the more exhibition graphics and so on and so forth? If it's the 1m80 type system, we have a range of systems that can suit the if you like, the startup type business. We work, as you know, very closely with Mamaki. We were actually Mamaki's very first dealer that they ever had in the UK, and been working with them for 20 years. So if it was a dye sublimation paper transfer machine, we'd be looking at something like the Mamaki TS 1800, which is a relatively new machine, introduced around about 18 months or so ago, designed specifically for paper transfer. Very, very productive, up to about 40 square meters an hour, exceptionally high quality, low cost inks. So everything that someone would want in terms of a solution. If they're looking at printing directly onto a textile, probably the associated machine with that, using the same print engine, is the TX300, and that's a direct-to-textile machine with similar sort of productivity levels if you're running as a 4-color. Sometimes when we print direct onto textile, we might want to run as a 6 or an 8-color, so we increase the color gamut but slow the machine down a little bit. So that's a choice that we normally discuss with customers to find out exactly what it is that they need, and guide them as to the sort of solution that will work best for them. And then, of course, as well as the printer, they will need some form of fixation device. Because unfortunately, there is no one-stop process in terms of textile applications.
Right.
If you're looking at producing a textile with a true textile ink, of course, there are some one-stop solutions if you're happy to use other ink processes, and that's a choice customers will make in terms of the range of textile they want to print onto. So there are other technologies out there such as UV, latex, etc. And they may serve a purpose, but as a true textile person, I believe obviously you should be using the correct technology if you want to print onto a textile.
Okay.
So you'd need a heat press, and that can or a heat fixation unit.
Right.
And dependent on whether you're printing direct to textile or via the dye sublimation process, you have a choice in terms of whether it's just a heat fixation with no pressure, which will be suitable for direct to textile, or indeed a rotary heat press where you apply heat and pressure, and that will work with both dye sublimation paper and also direct to textile. So it's a more versatile system. It's a higher investment, but it might be more future-proof to look at that if you consider textiles to be a growing area for you.
It always struck me as strange, though, that we have companies such as Marquis and that manufacture textile printers, but they don't make these heat presses and supply them. That's your job, isn't it?
Yeah, well, we don't make them, but we certainly packaging work with our partners. So we work with an Italian company again called Transmatic, based just outside of Milan, and they're specialists in their field. In the same way that Mamaki are specialists in their field of manufacturing digital printers. And I think it's quite right that we should be looking at partnering different manufacturing specialists for different processes. Okay. Otherwise, the whole sort of technology would get a bit watered down, and I've seen it. There can be compromises. So I really like the idea that people concentrate on their speciality, what we do. Yeah.
Well, we've got another clip now of RA Smart. So perhaps you'd just like to talk us through what we're looking at.
Yeah, so
here.
that's actually in our production room. So wearing our production hat, we are actually a commission printer. So we're actually using some range of systems for actually printing for our customers. So that's either some sublimation printing going on, and I saw some silk printing before. Yeah. And this is actually a steaming facility. That's actually some home furnishing textile, which is really quite a complex design, probably printed onto a velvet. And this is showing some of the after print processes which are involved or necessary when we are printing onto natural fabrics. Yeah. There's some very nice silk that's probably going to be turned into head squares or ties, etc.
And I think you've got here your own sewing department, haven't you, as well?
Our own what, sorry?
Sewing department.
So, yeah, we do. So what's happened more recently is our customers have been coming us and asking us to do print for them. Particularly on what we call the household textile sector. So fairly humble products like aprons, oven gloves and tea towels. But what our customers were doing, who are basically designers, are wanting to elevate that sort of product to a new level and have a product manufactured in the UK with their designs on it, and take it to a new sort of level, so people are actually prepared, the customers are prepared to pay a bit of a premium for a product. But it's very, very important that these products are manufactured in the UK, so it made sense for us to actually add on a makeup facility so we can actually add that service to our customers. And there's one of our end customers ending up in some nice silk in a shop in Macclesfield.
Fantastic, isn't it? I mean, that really is just manufacturing.
It's a real buzz, and we're certainly finding that we're more and more manufacturers are actually looking at bringing printed product back to the UK, and digital print is allowing that to happen. So that we're not stuck with the very large minimum order volumes that perhaps there would be if they were going overseas to have their designs printed. By actually doing it in-house, print to order, it's really working for the industry, and it's very, very exciting. Yeah.
Well, fantastic. Well, we've got one of your customers coming on next.
Really?
Actually. Yeah. So I thought I'd just get him up here now, and then we can get talking to him. Please welcome Mr. Stuart McLaren from your print partner.
I like my little band.
Yeah, I know. Sit yourself down.
I thought you'd forgot about me, that you were talking that long.
You know what he's like. He doesn't shut up once he gets talking about his specialist subjects, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I hadn't forgotten about you, mate.
Don't
Actually.
worry.
So how did you two get together? Because it's quite an interesting story, isn't it?
Yeah, it was probably a random one, because one day I'd left my old company that I used to work for, and I was basically being a print broker in the UK for about 6 months, and we kept being let down.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest things that I was going into was event branding, so I didn't want to let a customer down. So I just went on Google and found RA Smart, rang up Magnus in the morning and said, "Oh, do you have a fabric printer?" And he's like, "Yes, who are you?" I said, "Oh, I'm Stuart, I want to come and see it." And turned up, saw a Mamaki TX 400, which I ended up actually purchasing about an hour after being in Magnus's showroom. And then since
This
then,
is the sort of customer I really like.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, we all like customers like that. Yeah.
and then since then, every time I actually go to see Magnus, I seem to buy
you
more
buy something.
printers.
Yeah, funny that, isn't
I get
it?
the pies in every time. They're already. Yeah.
So since then, we've actually bought probably about 20 Mamakis from.
20.
Yeah.
That's a lot of textile printing.
Yeah, so we did the reverse. We didn't do like what a lot of guys probably in the hall do. They print solvent UV flatbed work
Yeah.
first. We did the reverse. We went really technical side, finishing flags, banners, soft signage first. This was 6 years ago.
For
And
events, really.
For events,
Yeah.
and then we became a trade supplier, so we
Right.
did more for the trade because the demand was there. And then since then, we've added two UV 320s, the UJV 55s, and a flatbed as well, to help deal with some of the requirements that we was getting from our clients who
Right.
wanted last minute bigger banners and stuff, basically. So we helped with that.
So what's a typical day like for you guys? It must be a bit unusual.
So we specialise in last minute print, so every day is different. As it stands right now, is it 8 or 9 320s?
I can't keep count.
I think
it's 8.
I think I've got 8 3.2 metre printers,
Right.
and they get switched on at 6 o'clock in the morning, and they run through till 10 o'clock at night processing orders. We process anywhere between 150 and 300 orders a day at the minute, and in our summer months we'll go up to 500, but production goes 24 hours.
Quite
So,
incredible. That really is.
And we can produce around about 700 square metres an hour across the machines at the moment.
Well, we've got a little clip of around your purposes. Just so happens. Why don't you just take a look, give us a talk through.
This was actually not that long ago. This was in May, our first big batch of new printers. So, as I said, whenever I seem to spend time with Magnus, I spend money.
It's costing you money,
But
yeah.
it's got worse, because the last time I went to see Magnus, I bought 4 printers at once, then the time after was free. So this is actually running that's the Mamaki 320DS.
Yeah.
You see him run there, and going through the transmatic ovens that Magnus was just talking about. So everything we produce on our fabrics have to go through the 2 big ovens. So we've got a traditional oven that a lot of people would have seen, which is the paper transfer solution.
Right.
Although we print direct, we use that oven because it can either do direct textiles, or it can do the paper transfer for us.
Right.
So we use it for both and just use the protection paper. We also have another transmatic oven which is takes the paper out of it, so when you're printing direct on the textiles, it literally just runs through at a metre a minute, 3.2 metres wide, and heat cures your fabric.
I wanted to ask Magnus, I think, this question, but it's dye sublimation, right? I sometimes find that a little bit confusing. And as you mentioned earlier, it is one of the easier routes for people to come in. But what can you do with it? What's it for?
It really is very versatile, and I think that can be part of the confusion, that people don't quite understand or realise the range of product that it can actually be used for. So when I look at my customer base that uses dye sublimation, I've got customers like Stuart that are using it for soft signage. One of my largest individual customers, who unfortunately beats Stuart in terms of number of Mamakis, he's got 28, and he's actually printing sportswear.
Right.
So it's exactly the same process. We're just talking fundamentally about a different material for a different application.
Okay.
And then we can have dye sublimation that can also be used to be printing onto rigid substrates. So if a rigid substrate has a a suitable polyester coating on it, we can also use exactly the same print technology and heat press technology to produce really fantastic imagery onto such things as aluminium sheeting for high-end wall art or ceramic mugs, or the list goes on and on, basically. Yeah.
Technical wear is something that I struggle to understand. The
And
cycling
me as well.
kit.
What does that mean?
Yeah, exactly. What is that? But it turns out that seems to be something that's printed using dye sublimation
Absolutely,
rather
yeah.
than direct.
Again, there are certain advantages printing either direct or dye sub, dependent on what the application is going to be used for. So one of the big advantages for dye sublimation paper transfer is that the textile you use does not have to be enhanced in any way to use it during a digital process. It's what we call standard P for P, which means prepared for print.
Right.
But we're not doing anything special for it for the fact it's digital. Because we then print onto the paper, and then we take the textile, and the textile does not get introduced into the process until after the design has been printed. It's only being introduced into the process at the point of application through the heat press. And the dye goes through the heat press, and then we actually it's drawn into the polyester content of the material, and at that point that material is color fast and light fast. We can wash it at 100 degrees centigrade, it's not going to deteriorate. We have dyed the fabric. But one of the big advantages is the textile will only actually draw the amount of dye from the paper to allow it to actually impregnate it. We won't be left with extra ink on there, assuming everything has been calibrated as it should have been. So that means we don't have to go through a washing process afterwards.
Right.
So that's a big advantage when we're making product that's going to be worn, for example, that we don't have to introduce an extra process, which we would do if we were printing direct. So that's why dye sublimation paper transfer is exceptionally popular in sportswear and indeed in fashion. And also home furnishing now. There's a big growth area of using the same techniques and processes into home furnishings, as we've seen developments of the range of polyesters which are available. I mean, there are polyesters I can show you, Colin, and you would think it was a linen. They really have improved the range of polyesters that are available.
We did a show yesterday talking about giftware and sublimation processes, and a chap was showing us polyester T-shirts that actually felt like cotton. Yeah, they were lovely. Yeah. Stuart, where are you getting your textile consumables from? Because you must get through a ton of them. Please don't say it's Magnus.
It just happens to be Magnus. But
really?
we did actually do quite a lot of testing in the market. One of the biggest things when you buy textile printers is when you print on a UV or a flatbed or solvent, when you print it, it comes out the colour and it's dry or it's tacky, but you know the colour it's going to be.
Right.
The biggest thing for me is if I want to produce a magenta, it's actually a real dull pink when it comes off the printer, and then when it goes through the ovens it changes colour.
Right.
Now that's all down to the coatings and the heat and that. Now the biggest thing we did was we had to go out and test loads of different fabrics and check that the consistency of the coatings were correct for our print.
Right.
Now we did work with one supplier, it was all going fine, and then things happened overseas with China and that, and other places where the materials would come from, and the coatings would be slightly different. So if you're running a big job of like 5,000 metres, which isn't uncommon for the sort of jobs we run, you would then get a roll that would be a completely different colour.
Yeah.
And that's just down to a coating side of it. So what we then did was obviously having people like Magnus as actually runs printers as well, you can actually go to them and go, right, actually this is the problem I'm having, how can we resolve it? I was actually also lucky enough to go out to Italy just recently to the MS factory that Magnus was talking about earlier, and again they look at a lot of different bits that go with the machine. So it might be great that you've got the perfect fabric and that, but that fabric might not go through your oven correctly because it will shrink or stretch too much, or you might need, when you're printing onto it, you might want a belt feed instead of a paper transfer or direct. So one of the materials that we print a lot of now is an elastic material. It's called elasto. So the hanging banners that you see around the halls, they're now more and more of them's gone to fabric. Now that product I can't print direct on my Mamaki at a reasonable speed. For the simple fact is when it goes through the machine it tensions and then it loses its tension as it slows down, and you get banding through the product. Now we don't want to supply a banded product. So what we did was we then bought the 320DS, and we, instead of buying the TS version, which is just paper transfer, we did some modifications, put a vacuum plate in it, So it can print either direct to textiles or paper. It's the same ink. But when we print on the paper, we still get the fast speed. We get a better ink consumption. But then when it goes through the oven, it's being pressed exactly at the right tension, so the fabric's not shrinking or moving, so you get the best image. Now, all these things are things you've got to play about with before you get a machine. Now, there's lots of people in the hall now selling machines, and to be fair, I have to say there's probably a lot of Mamakis in the hall this year. It's because they play with the smaller format. The new TX300 replaces what was a TS34, which was one of my first printers. That printer will sit there and print at 45 square meters an hour. It did for us on a 4-pass all day without a problem. It just sits there ticking away, and you can just leave it running. The technical bit is when it comes to heat curing it or running it through the sewing departments, which you've got to have when you do fabrics.
Yeah, the sewing department.
Oh, you've lost your mic. He's just asked me, so you lot know, is the sewing department's always a big part of it. So I'd update that. So we've got 14 seamstresses. It started off with just a few of us. It actually started with my mum, who worked part-time in a supermarket because she was semi-retired. Here comes the mic man.
No one saw you.
So she started on her own, just sewing away, and since then we've added more. We're also working with the local college to try and bring an apprenticeship scheme together, because seamstresses are now not as common as what they used to be when my mum was younger, because the seamstress job, which used to be where people would go after school to the factory, is now like a McDonald's or a call centre job. So there's less skilled seamstresses. But then when I've been walking around the hall today, it's my first day at the show, there's now machines that you can run a sewing machine and you don't need anyone who's skilled at all. The machine does it all for you.
I was going to ask you that about seamstresses and sewing and everything. I mean, that's not something that sign makers are necessarily used to. Although if they're making banners, you've got to put a stitch in that and to put the rods. But where are you going to connect with people that are going to do this for you? Because all of a sudden you're outside of your comforts now.
Yeah, I mean, there are specialist suppliers out there, like we've been talking about the specialist suppliers of the printers or the heat presses or whatever the other technology is. There are specialist suppliers of sewing machine systems. I mean, sewing machines have been around for an awful long time, and now there are companies that have developed specific machines for the soft signage sector, for sewing in the silicon edges and so on and so forth. And they are now readily available, and they're experts in their own field. And we work with those guys, so we can actually put our potential customers in contact with them to discuss their requirements and see what sort of assistance that they can give. Because it is an important factor. It's great if you can produce 500 meters of textile, but you've got no one to actually to sew it up, or not got the capability to sew it up and turn it into a product. There's little point in that, isn't there?
And I have an older staff force. None of them's here, so I'm allowed to say that. So the sewing department, typically at our factory, the average age is about 45 to 50 years old.
That is not that old.
Oh, is that not that old? Oh, okay.
Where are you based, by the way?
Lincoln.
Right, okay.
So we recruited locally. There used to be lots of manufacturing in Lincoln for making Marks and Spencer's trousers and that in the old days, and it's just not there now. So we find that it tends to be an older lady, or Eastern Europeans still do a lot of sewing. So we have a couple of nice Eastern European ladies that's joined our team just recently.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, you do need people to do the stitching, don't you? So, but for somebody starting out from scratch, then obviously, it's another factor.
It is a factor, and there's no getting away from it. They will need something if they want to get involved with this industry. But as I said before, there now are systems out there that will do most of this for you. And I had to go on a machine the other day, and I'm no seamstress, and I could actually sew on the silicon edging really quite easily. So there are systems there that will really make it help take the challenge away from it, I should say.
The problem you have with that is when I showed my mum one of these systems, now she's in her late 50s, when I showed her one of these systems, I didn't say her exact age because she would hit me, and I think then what you tend to get is you get a seamstress going, well, I can do it better my way. So that's always the problem that I face when we start getting more towards buying automated machines, is to make sure that they're comfortable, because it's more like a computer. The one that I've seen this morning has got all sorts of weird and wonderful settings on it, which makes it amazing. I could go pick up a banner and sew it, and I can definitely not use a sewing machine. I would probably sew my hand to the table. But this machine here, literally, I could probably sew a banner in 2 minutes.
So, tell me about this. The Italians are really, considered to be almost like in textiles. They're like the Ferraris, aren't they?
Well, they're the go-to country because the majority of printed textile in Europe is being printed in Italy.
Yeah. Is that why all these other manufacturers are buying up Italian textile prints?
They have an amazing machine as well. I think Magnus picked up on it earlier. So when I was over at MS's factory, I saw what's called an MS Lario, and there's about 25 of them in the world, and that machine is something else. So it's 1,100 litres of ink to fill it up for the first time, which straight away you're like, that's a lot of money. And it had 160 heads and ran at 210 square metres a minute, not an hour. So basically all my consumption in a day, in an 8-hour shift, I could do in about 12 minutes on this machine. And it was something else. And these machines are now being currently used mainly for fast fashion. So when you go into Next, River Island and that, where they're using dye sublimation garments and that, which has never been done before in quick turnaround. You used to wait 12 weeks and that. They were turning around campaigns in a couple of days. And you see the Italians, they're developing inks, they're developing the latest machines. Most of the pretty much both Transmatics are out of there, and they've developed another new bit of technology, which means now I can see and control the oven on my iPhone. And see if there's a problem with it. The factory over in Italy can go, oh Stuart, one of your bearings are getting weak. The new part's already on its way to you and the engineer's booked in. Now, that stuff like that is making my job easier, because I'm not waiting for it to go wrong and then go, oh, it's gone wrong, and then, oh, now I can't heat seal. So they're already developing the technology, and this was the same with buyouts that's happened with EFI buying brands, Mamaki buying brands. They're buying the Italian technology because they've been doing it for so much more.
Yeah, exactly.
So, what's next for you as a business? I mean, not more Mamaki printers, surely.
Don't let Magnus hear you saying no more Mamakis. So at the minute,
don't tell him.
at the minute, Textiles is growing really big, and I think that we've been leading for a while in textiles, and there's more and more people coming into textiles, and I encourage people to go into textiles. There's a big market for it, and I've always pushed that made in Britain is where it should be. It's great that we have to get things from overseas, but more UK manufacturing will only be good for the market. So I currently am looking at more kit. What that kit is, I have no idea. Our UV division, which was always like a really small part of the company, is now actually really big. Our textile side keeps up comfortably because of the amount of machines we've got. But as we launch more products, from stretch frames to more feather flag design, street branding, hanging banners, whichever product it is, and more people see, actually, we don't want a PVC hanging banner anymore. We want something that we can fold up. It takes seconds to put up, and that. As that market becomes bigger, we'll have to look at kit. The MS kit is an impressive bit of kit. The one that's here is a 1.8. That wouldn't be the size that I chose, just because we don't actually print much work at 3.2 meters wide. We use the width of the machine to put multiple jobs next to each other. Just because we have a 3.2 meter machine doesn't mean that all our work's 3.2 meters wide. It's like the 5 meter machines that's now come out. There's 5 meter machines. How many jobs they do in a year on a 5 meter machine that's 5 meters wide? I would guess less than 0.5%, because there's no demand for it yet. But it will come. There will be more and more demand. We use our machine for making it as a commercial printer, putting 5 flags next to each other, but nesting jobs and stuff. That's what we use our machines for. So in terms of kit, I think UV wise, there isn't the next stage at the minute with Mamaki. I have to admit, I like the brand. The support's always been there. The product's the right price, the quality. There's machines where a manufacturer came in to see me, I won't say who it was, and they said that quality we could get on our machine, but the machine would be double the price.
Right.
At the same print speeds and that. And you look at it, the quality of these machines, and that's why there's so many of them out there. They are good machines. The print quality is good, the price is good, the ink prices is one of those things that I'll always whinge about. Consumable prices, as Magnus's eyes roll back. But I think when you then look at the bigger industrial machines, the ink prices change dramatically, but you pay more for the machine, so it's weighing it up. Do you pay 150 grand for a machine and your ink prices are down at like £50 a litre, or you pay 70 grand for a machine and your inks are at 110, and it's weighing up. Yeah, exactly. And they all do a similar job. It's just the speed, the quality and the reliability. The other real big thing for me and we class ourselves as a manufacturer because we don't really print ourselves as much as the PVC market. We're more soft signage making products. That side of it, the biggest thing for anyone who's going into it, if it was me, is to make sure that you have someone that is on the end of the phone to ring up and say, I'm really struggling with this, I don't understand why it's doing this. And also downtime, massive thing, because when we started, if you have one printer and you start producing it, and it's the same with any signage company, at least with solvents and UVs you can get your head around it a bit quicker. With the fabric there's more processes and you can cause yourself more headaches. So reliability and the response times from any manufacturer is always the biggest thing when I'm looking at kit as well.
I see. Well, I think that's about all we've got time for. I don't know if there anybody who'd like to pose a question. Yes. Who?
Do you need to run with the mic?
Do it all, you know.
Hi, Magnus. Nice to hear you. And you mentioned that there are some silk printing processes that are particularly kind of involved and technical, and you need special manufacturing techniques to do them. Are those kind of techniques ever likely to be automated, or will you always need people to do them? And on a related point, it seems there's something of a resurgence going on in textile manufacturing in the UK. Why do you think that is, and do you think it's sustainable?
Yeah, well, I'll answer the second question first, if I may. I think it's very sustainable, and there definitely is a resurgence. I mean, I'm very pleased to say that only last week we signed a deal for a UK fashion brand, 1.3 million euros, and it's a complete digital solution, a whole factory coming to the UK for UK manufacturing. Now, these sort of systems don't come along very often, but it's really, really refreshing to see that it is actually happening, and that's a UK brand wanting to manufacture in the UK. As regards the technical challenges of printing onto onto natural fabrics with reactives and acid dyes, there are challenges, but it's all achievable. We sell systems to do that literally on a weekly basis, and we sell all the auxiliary equipment to go with it. Whether it'll all become completely automated and literally have an inline solution where it goes from pre-treatment to print to steam to wash to dry, technically it can be done right now. In reality, it doesn't really stack up from a commercial perspective, because if you have more than one printer, you've got to have that whole line set up yet again, and we're talking about very, very expensive equipment. Yeah.
Okay, well, I think that's it. Thank you, gentlemen, very much indeed for coming on the show today and talking to us about your companies.
No problem.
Pleasure.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.